Hi there, before we get started, this video here, it's quite long. I want to cover at the beginning here what we're actually going to do. So these are some of the things that we're going to create. We'll use text and make it 3D. We'll do the same thing for logos. We'll explore different materials here, perspex, kind of plastic and glass. I'll show you how to cast shadows, working with lights and adjusting a camera and its angle. We'll also explore some easy fake 3D like this option here. It looks 3D, but really it's just a little easy trick we can do in Photoshop. This is a hand-drawn word. This one here is done with a path or a vector shape you can trace. So there's lots of things to explore here in this Photoshop 3D video. What I'm going to do is I'll pass you over to the real live version of myself to explain a little bit more on how to get started. Hi there, my name is Dan. There are exercise files for this video so you can play along. You can download them free from the link in the description. Just note that it's extract from my longer Photoshop Advanced course. If you want to check out the full course, there'll be a link in the description as well. All right, get in there, enjoy the class. Hi there, welcome to the 3D section of the Photoshop Advanced course. In the next few videos, we are going to explore how to make things 3D, extrude them like the text here. We'll work with different materials like up here, glass and plastics and perspex. We'll explore cameras, we'll explore lighting, shadows. But so you know, this is, I guess, still an introduction. Not a super quick one, but know that 3D in Photoshop is quite a big topic, and we could spend 50 videos on it. Hopefully here, this will get you going. It'll let you create the majority of the stuff most designers and photographers want to do with 3D. All right, let's get started with the first video. All right, to get started, let's open up wood background from our 15 3D folder. You can work with any image. Let's click open. Now, before we get started, we just got to make sure you actually have 3D in your version of Photoshop. Not all of them do. If you can see this little panel up here that says 3D, you're in luck. You can carry on. If it's not there, unfortunately, you just can't make it work on your particular machine. Two reasons. The main one is that you need what's called a 64-bit version of Photoshop. You can check it here under Help and System Info. At the top here, you can see this is a 64-bit version. If it says 32, unfortunately, you just can't do it. Your machine in its heart is 32 and it can't be upgraded. So you need a different computer, unfortunately. If you do have a 64-bit and you can't see it, the other thing is something called VRAM. It has a minimum requirement, I think, of about 500 megabytes of VRAM. It's pretty nerdy stuff, but I guess if you are looking to buy a computer, make sure it has loads of VRAM, as much as you can get, more than half a gig or 500 megabytes, and just make sure the operating system is 64-bit. All right, the other thing we'll do is we'll set up our workspace, get a window workspace and make sure it's set to 3D, and I'm gonna hit reset 3D. The other thing you might do is under your preferences, remember edit preferences on a PC or up here on my Mac. Go to performance, 3D is real stressful. Okay, so you might yank this up a bit higher to say Photoshop can have a bit more of my RAM, 83%. Everything else is gonna run slower, but at least Photoshop's gonna work okay. All right, so we're gonna look at two kinds of 3D in Photoshop. We'll look at something called postcard and one called extrusion. Before we get started, I'm gonna grab my type tool, pick a font, pick a size, and type a word. Rad. No good reason. Okay, pick a color for it. You might have to switch back to your layers panel if you're freaked out by this 3D. We'll get into him in a second. Pick a color. It doesn't matter what color you pick. Now, picking your color here is just going to save time later on. You can change it once it's 3D, but it's easier to pick your color here. Now, if you are doing two words that are on separate layers, you will have to merge them into one layer. Let's just quickly do that in case so we're not going to do it for this one, but let's say we've got your rad. Okay, and you want to do 3D for this. What you're going to have to do is select both of them, right click them and say convert to shape, and then right click them and say merge shapes. That's if you're using more than one word. I'm going to undo. I don't want more than one word. So the text is fine. So let's look at the two ways of creating 3D. So the background layer here, we're going to do what's called postcard 3D. So we're going to right click it and say you are a postcard. The 3D world opens up. So the navigation tools for 3D are along the top here. We're going to use this first one, just click hold. It's easier to click hold and drag the outside than it is the actual object until you know what you're doing. So I'm just clicking and dragging and you can see I can rotate it around. So that's what postcard does. It makes it super thin Okay, which is going to be fine for us because we're going to use it as a background. So you might be laying out your UI web design template, something like that. So you might be laying out, say, a web design or UI mockup that you've created. In Photoshop, you just want to kind of move it on an angle to make it look like it's at a cool angle or maybe mocked up onto a cell phone. So postcard will be perfect. What we want to do is we want to add some full 3D, some extrusion. We'll do it to this text here. So right click the text and we're going to use this other option. It says new 3D extrusion from selected layer. And that's it. Okay, same tool as before, and I'm going to click and drag in this area over here. All right, so that is how to add 3D. This is your extrusion depth, how thick you want this thing. Do you want it to be not negative? This little slider is a little bit weird. It kind of resets itself every time. So if you want it to be positive, I'm going to type in 100 pixels and see what it looks like. All right, so we're going to undo a few times because what I want to do is I want to show you something first. We want to connect these two because at the moment they're actually two different 3D worlds. So I'm going to keep undoing. So let's back to the beginning. All right, so my layers panel, this guy's 3D, this guy here, so he's flat. This guy's not 3D yet, so I'm going to right click him, make him a 3D extrusion. And to get them living in the same world, you go back to layers and just join the two. Okay, you hold shift, click both of them, and then hit Command E, or you can right click here and go to merge layers. The difference now is, if I drag it around, you can see they're actually a part of the same world. Cool, that's what we want to do. So now we want to work on these two things separately, mainly just this extrusion here. I want to have it not so thick. So go to the 3D panel, click on rad, and the extrusion, I'm going to just type it in. 100 pixels is going to work for me. So now it brings up an interesting navigation rule. Okay. If I click and drag this now, I'm actually just moving the text separate from the background. How do I move them both at the same time? So there's two ways of moving. You move the scene or the camera, or you move the object. How do you know if you've got one selected on the other? You see it over here. See rad? I have him selected. If I click on my background mesh, okay, that's background. And using these tools along the top, they actually only affect the object I've selected. So what you can do is you can click on current view or scene and move that around. It moves the camera that we're looking through. The objects aren't moving at all, we're just moving the camera. So what I'd like to do is move it so I can see the sides, and I want to move this fella back. So I've clicked on the object, I want to move it closer. There's a couple of ways. This one right here, the move tool. Okay, I can click and drag it and just get it closer till it pokes out the back. Or I can grab this blue handle here. This moves the Z axis. Okay, Z is forward and back towards the camera, away from the camera. And the green one is up and down. And it's really hard to get the red one there. So you might have to rotate it around. But remember, if I rotate it here, I'm rotating the object. So I'm going to click on the current view and then move it around. Move tool. All right. So we're going to get our angle now. So I'm going to kind of get it like this. And before we go on, what I want to do is quickly show you how you do it with a logo, because we've done it with text. So what I'm going to do is just turn the eyeball off on the rad layer and the background mesh, and we'll just bring in a logo before we go any further, because the rules apply whether you're bringing in somebody else's logo or using your text or any sort of shape you've drawn in maybe Illustrator. So I'm going to go File, Place Embedded, and in your 15 3D folder, I've got a logo in here. It's just the Twitter logo. Okay, bring it in. Cool thing about it, it's vector. Hit return. Actually, I'm going to make it a bit smaller. And all we need to do is we can go to layers, right click, extrusion. Okay, or in this 3D layer, it doesn't really matter. I want to make it a 3D extrusion and hit create. You get to the exact same place. Okay, so whether you used our rad text or you want to do it with a logo, there is no real difference. Okay, there we go. I'm going to undo. Goodbye, Twitter. And I'm going to turn these back on. All right, so what I want to do is I want a kind of an angle that looks cool. It's a little hard because you can't see all the shadowing here. We'll add lights and stuff later, but I'm going to get to kind of an angle that I like. And I'm kind of guessing here. So what I want to do is do a render. So rendering is going to at least get started under 3D. There's this option here. It's all the buttons plus R. And what it's going to do is it's going to stress your computer out and it's going to start trying to render it like it would be when it's finished. It's going to take a long time. So often I don't wait for this to finish. It's just doing its thing. I'm just like, yep, you keep going until I get a sense of like, yeah, I like that angle or I don't. Okay, to get it to stop, you hit the escape key. To figure out how much longer it's got, see down the bottom left here? Okay, time remaining about 5 minutes. Never worry about the minutes. It goes up and down, kind of in crazy steps. So you can kind of get a sense. We're 10% through, so it's going to be a while. And all it's going to happen is it's going to get more and more realistic. So I'm just going to hit escape. It just kind of freezes it there halfway through its render. So you might say, I like it, but what I want to do is maybe have the current view. I'm going to use the move option. I'm just going to click, hold, and actually no, the slide option, the really hard to use one. I'm going to slide this camera back. And then I'm going to zoom it in using this last option. Because I want a really cool kind of like depth of field, or I want the perspective to be quite strong. Kind of in the center there, maybe zoom out a little bit. Remember, render. On my Mac, it's Command, Option, Shift, and R. On a PC, it's Control, Alt, Shift, R. Okay, and I'm happy with that angle and that composition. Actually, I'm not. Escape, and I'm just going to kind of come back a bit. So, a couple of things I want to do is I need this background to be larger. So I've got to kind of extend it out this way. And because I'm pedantic, I kind of want it like that. So, my background layer, there it is there. So what I need to do is I need to make the background just larger. So click on this last option here. This only appears if I have an object selected, either the rad text or the mesh background. And all I need to do again, click out here. I'm just gonna make it bigger. Feels like it's big enough. I do need to slide it though. I'm gonna grab my move tool and I'm actually gonna use this red guy because I can kind of see him there. Almost there, he needs to probably come down, green. So you're playing with the X, Y, Z. There it is there, a little bit more scale. If you find 3D really tough to work with and you're like, man, this is quite hard, don't worry, it is. It took me ages to get used to 3D. Even now, it can be a little bit tough when you're using a different program like Photoshop. A lot of the stuff when I'm doing 3D, I'll use something called Cinema 4D. It's kind of more for animated motion graphics. Photoshop does it fine, but my poor little computer here it's a really good computer, but it is stressed trying to render this stuff. Whereas something like Cinema 4D is purpose built for doing 3D, especially movement. Photoshop does it fine though, so especially for static graphics. Yeah, anyway, that's enough rendering. Escape. Didn't actually tap escape. No, I have. All right, I'm gonna just play around with my adjustments. I want to click on the current view. And I'm just gonna rotate this around until I find something I'm a little bit more happy with. And while I wiggle this around and find something that I like, I will see you in the next video. You don't have to watch me. And in the next video, we are going to look at materials and textures. Because at the moment, we've got basically just a JPEG in the back. And our little type here is just a kind of a really plain solid color. Let's look at doing different materials and textures in the next video. Hi there, this video is all about materials and textures. We'll make some kind of like blue acrylic, just some shiny green stuff, some glass. All right, let's figure out how to make them. All right, so continuing on from our last tutorial, we're going to look at the materials or textures of our 3D extrusion, specifically this type here. So what we need to do is have the background layer selected. It's not actually going to be called background anymore. I'm going to call it 3D type, and we're going to go to our 3D panel. So the materials are these things here. You can see inflation material, bevel material. Okay, so we've got the front of it, the edges of it, the extrusion, which is the sides of it, the back bevel, and the backside, which we can't see. What we want to do is do it for all of them. So what we can do is just click on this one and select this. So we've got all of the different materials selected. And what you'll see up the top here is your properties panel changes. So the starting off material is, if I drop this down, your basic one is this guy here. If I hover above him, he's no texture. That's what we've got. There's no texture, has a diffusion color of the green that we got from our type. This is how you change your color. Say you want it to be pink now, pinker color, and we're gonna hit render. And you can see it's using that color now. Escape. So you can start with this basic color and play around with things like the shine, reflection, roughness, bump, opacity, refraction. Experiment them. We're not going to go through all of them. Reflection is probably like a big shiny material. Okay, if you go 100%, it's a complete mirror. It's not going to be that useful. So I'm going to reflect a bit of shininess. I'm going to hit render, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time waiting for this to render so you can see what it is. All right, even I got bored of that, so we sped it up to here. What I'm going to show you is while you're working, it's best to probably turn your render settings down to a really low quality, just so that you get a quick look of it without it going too far. But before we do that, you can see the shine and reflection, okay, appearing here. You can see the reflection of the background graphic, okay, the wood cast in there. It's pretty amazing. You can see the reflection of each of the letters on itself. It's all very amazing. It's starting to get nicer and nicer, but you can see it's got a lot more rendering to do before this thing is perfect. So things you can do to speed up your render time. First thing is under your image, oh, I'm gonna have to hit escape. Okay, under your image size, you can work at a really small. We're working at 1500 pixels across, which is reasonably small, right? I did it for this exercise so that when you're playing along, it's not going too slow. The cool thing about it though is that rad here is vector. So we could scale this, we could scale it right down to something really small and work on it there, just, you know, a really small version. And when we're finished, before we do our final render, just yank up the pixels to something larger. The only thing that's going to limit it is our background graphic. I made it 1500 pixels across. You might have to just work with a smart object that is a lot larger so that you can scale it up. The other thing you can do to speed things up is under preferences, and we're going to go to performance. You can yank this up even higher. You can switch it to this huge pixel dimension option, and under 3D, make sure that your VRAM, it's different from the regular RAM. This is your video RAM. I've got mine at 100%. Take over, please. Shadow quality, low. High quality, threshold, low. Let's click OK, and now I'm going to do another render. Well, I won't do another render, but it'll go faster. So let's look at a little bit more materials. This 3D environment can get a little bit tricky. So what you can do, like on the layers panel, remember earlier on we went, only show me stuff that is a type layer. Okay, you can do the same in the 3D layer. And I click on make sure in your layers panel you've actually got the layer selected. 3D here, you can say, actually just show me the meshes, which is the actual physical objects. There's my type and there's my background. Or I can turn that off and actually just turn on the materials. Okay, so that's the material that is my background. And these are the materials that are being used on this object, the front, back, left side, and any corners. Once we get into light, you can turn those on as well. We just have the one overall light at the moment. So under materials, I'm going to select all of these. Okay, I want all of the materials for rad. And you can play with these, but under this little drop down here, there's a bunch of default ones as well. You just hover above them. They'll give you kind of an explanation of what they are. Cotton fabric, denim. Okay, so you can play around with these and apply it. Let's look at maybe something like, what kind of glass? Crystal glass, frosted glass, glass scratches. Pick one, Dan. Glass smooth. I'm picking glass smooth, and problem with the glass is while I'm working on it, it's completely see-through. And when I hit render, it's quite the stress on the machine trying to render glass. So remember 3D, hit all the buttons. All right, it's got started, but even on the lower qualities, it's still not right. The one thing with the quality though, make sure you turn it back up when you do your final export, okay, or you're ready for your final print. All right, before we move on, especially working with glass, it's just the rendering's taking too long. So what we can do is you can grab the rectangle marquee tool, and what we might do actually is turn up my rendering. So back to 3D, and I'm gonna say actually, let's go for high. Quality is gonna crank back up. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my rectangle marquee tool, select a chunk. So I'm not able to see the whole thing. Well, I can, but I just want to see just this chunk. Maybe that bit there. And if I click on this render button down the bottom, it'll render just where I have a rectangle marquee tool. So I can zoom in a bit. Nope, got to wait for it to finish. And instead of trying to render out the whole thing, I can just take a little snippet and get an idea of the material before I go and maybe commit to the whole thing being rendered. So make a selection, rectangle marquee tool, and then just give that button a click. You can see I cranked it up pretty high, and you can see it's going even slower than it was before. But I'm getting a good sense of the object here. That's enough for me. Escape. All right, I'm going to select, deselect, and I'm going to turn my preferences back to something more manageable. Shadow quality, back to low. All right. All right, a couple of things before we move on about materials. One is you can see this, it's kind of rendering this dark black line through it. You might not be able to see it because you can't see this floor plane. To get rid of that kind of weird dark line, go to back to this option here in the 3D layer, showing me everything in my 3D scene. Click on the word scene. Click on the word environment. There's the ground plane. Photoshop puts it in there by default because it's cool. If you don't have this wooden background, at least the shadows get cast on the floor, which is pretty cool. But in our case, I want to turn the opacity down to 0. The other thing is because it's glass, it's hard to see. What you can do is you can go to scene and show me the lines. They do render, so you can use it kind of to re-angle things, but then turn them off before you render it out. And let's grab our material for this guy. Okay, for rad, and don't use glass. Stresses the machine out. What you can do though is start messing around with some of these other colors. Okay, and they're not just colors, some of them have what's called a bump map, which means they're actually going to give it a kind of a lumpy look. It's out of the scope of this video. If you want to go back to just a standard flat color, kind of about halfway down, there's one called no texture. And then click on the diffusion color and pick a color. I'm going to go back to our little sminty green. Okay, so there are some built-in materials you can use. Once you've loaded them, you can adjust them. Also know that there are actually some more that Adobe will give you. I'll give it to you free if you go to 3D and go to this option that says get more content. It'll load up the Adobe website. It'll come to here, and down here there's materials that you can download. There's also some meshes. When they say mesh, they mean a 3D model. And down here, there's different stages, kind of lighting setups for products, all sorts of awesome stuff. Once you have downloaded the materials and unzip them, you can go into here and just go to the cog and say load materials. All right, so that's going to be it for materials. Let's get into the next video where we look at using cameras. Hi there, this video is all about looking at 3D cameras, and we're going to look at creating a cool depth of field. You can see in this render here on the left, it's kind of in sharp focus, then as it heads off into the background, it fades out, kind of mimicking a really shallow depth of field in a normal camera. We'll show you how to save templated views where everything's kind of angled exactly how you want, and then you can move to different views to take a look at it from different angles, but always come back to that view you really liked. All right, let's jump in now and work out how to do it. All right, so what is a camera? A camera is what we're looking through. So we're looking through right now through a camera, okay, to see this rad text. Now, often what we need to do is we need to kind of get the angle that we love, but also this is the way I want it to render, right? This angle. But let's say I want to move this closer to the background. So I need a different angle. So I need to see like how close it is and then kind of drag it in. But then I need to go back and like, oh, it's not quite the same as it was before. So I'm going to undo. So what you do is you set your camera. Up the top here, if you've got current view selected, go up to here where it says view and say, I want to save this view, please. This is going to be the rad view. The nice thing about this is rad view saved there, and it means that I can work here and I can get my, say I want this to be, I'm going to click on it. I'm going to move it a bit further out. So there's a bit more gap between it. Okay, so I'm going to click out here. So I've got the current view selected and I'm happy with that. But let's say I want to get it back to where it was, all kind of positioned and composed nicely. Let's click on rad view. Photoshop's clever and moves the camera back. Cool, huh? You can have as many views as you like. You can also see these default ones. I can look at it from the top, please. Instead of trying to rearrange everything, you can see I'm looking straight down on top. There's my text and there is my very thin background. Default is the way it opened up, straight on. And I'm going to go back to rad view. All right, so that's setting up the camera. Let's look at depth of field. So with rad view selected up here, you've got this here, okay, the depth of field plane. Now let's add a depth. With it at 0, there is no like super focus, and the higher it is, the more shallow the depth of field is. Let's get it at 2. And what you'll see is there is a bit of blurriness and a bit of not blurry. Yours will be different because yours is kind of angled differently, but there's like a central bit of focus. That's where this distance comes in and out. So you can kind of move, can you see if I'm dragging it left and right? It's kind of going past and through to the back. And this only works if you're at an angle. Let's go to a really steep angle. So you can see kind of about 2/3 down the wood, it's in sharp focus. Everything else is not. The depth, remember, is how like sharp that focus is or how narrow it is. Okay, so I'm gonna have mine at something like 2. and then the distance. If I go way out, you can see the far distance of my wood is in focus, and this is here. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, go back to my rad view, and I'm just gonna play around with the depth. I like that, but I want the kind of sharp focus to be at the front of this R, but this can blur out. Now, the only trouble with this is that you can see it's no longer rad view. Rad view actually is tied into this depth of field. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna save another one. This is gonna be rad depth of field, even. The rad depth of field view, okay? And you can leave the other one there, or you can click on it and go, you, my friend, are dead. And go back to rad view. Awesome, I'm gonna hit render. And it's cool, but not as extreme as I want it to be. Just gonna hit escape, grab the depth, and you're gonna go higher. So all this stuff's getting pretty blurry. Distance, yeah, there. Render again. All right, it's okay. I'm gonna mess about with it while in between videos. I'm gonna do lots of this because I really love that depth of field, and I'm really gonna try and fake it here. I'm gonna experiment while you're in between videos. All right, so I'm kind of back before you go because of the joys of speeding up the render. And yeah, I'm happy with that. You can see sharp focus on the left, fading out in the background. All right, let's get into the next video where we look at lighting and casting shadows and things. Hey, it's me again. I just want to quickly jump in. If you're watching but not following along, you can download the exercise files that I'm using in this course free of charge. They are down in the link in the description. Also note that quickly check this stuff out. This is some of the content we create in the Photoshop Essentials and Photoshop Advanced course. It's a mixture of creating beautiful Photoshop work as well as all the professional workflow tricks and techniques. It's my paid course. There is a link in the description for that paid course. So if you like my teaching style and you like what you see here, check it out. But for now, let's continue on with the free stuff here. You don't want to hear me talking anymore. Let's get going. Hi there. This video, we're going to look at lights in 3D. There are 4 kinds of lights. We'll work out how they affect our objects and how they cast shadows. We'll show you how to move them around to get kind of more dramatic effects. That's not very dramatic, but you get what I mean. Let's jump in now and work out how they work in Photoshop. All right, working with lights. Now by default, you're given a light. It's here under environment. It's just a default light just to give things shadows and so they can be seen. So you've got one light to start with. What we're gonna do is look at adding our own kind of like purposeful lights. You do it by, on your 3D layer here, down here, there's a little light bulb. Let's look at an infinite light. Think of the infinite light as the sun. You can't really move it physically. You can change the angle by grabbing this like little ball thing on the end here, and you can kind of decide where it's going to be cast. You can see the shadows affecting it in the background there. So I'm going to go straight up and try and cut. You can see the shadow being cast on the background. It's a little hard to see. I'm going to hit render to give you a quick view. Okay, and you can see here, it's kind of light from the top. It's kind of casting shadows on itself here and onto the background. So infinite light is a perfect one. Think of it as like sunlight. It's just kind of a good fill light. And that may be all you need. What you might find though is, I'm going to hit escape, stop it rendering, is that you've now got 2 lights. You've got the environmental light, which is kind of like an ambient light, plus you've got the sun. So they're both working together. Let's say you don't want the environmental light because you just want this really strong sunlight. So here in environment, just turn this one here, turn IBL off. Now we've only got this infinite sun. It makes I guess a little, not clearer, but it's just one directional sunlight. Now when I render, it really looks like we've just got a single bulb. It's not super strong, but in the shadows, it's super dark. whereas an ambient light bounces around and kind of fills lots of holes. Things you can do to adjust the infinite light. So with it selected down here, you can decide on how soft the shadows are, or shadows, whether it has shadows at all. You might not want them at all. So we've got shadows, the softness is really low, but watch this. If I crank it up, it'll get more feathered and more feathered rather than being a really kind of harsh, strong, thick shadow. Give you a quick render as well to show it. Okay, you can see now it is like a kind of a fluffy shadow. All right, escape. You can also play around with the intensity. Okay, how bright this thing is and how maybe not bright it is. Easy one. And color just means it's going to tint the color. Say you want a kind of a weird yellow tint. Not a weird yellow tint, but you get what I mean. You just want a kind of a daylight kind of flavor to it. Or you could go something a bit more indoorsy. More like fluorescent lighting. Kind of some sort of blue. All right, let's look at some of the other lighting types. You've got two other ones. Spot and point do a very similar thing. Infinite light is like the sun. Point light, let's turn that one on. I'm going to turn off the infinite sun. Think of a point light as carrying around a bulb, physically carrying it around and moving around the room. Whereas the infinite light just comes from everywhere in one direction. The bulb is actually something you can find. So with it selected, we can actually move it around. Now for me, I can see it, it's down here. You might have to zoom out, zoom, 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 and you should be able to see it. And what we can do now is, it's a little hard to move this thing around. What you might do is look at it from the top. Maybe we can go up to our views, current view, and go to top. This might be the easier way to look at it. So I've got my point light selected, and I want to move it, use move, grab the red one, go this closer. You can see I'm actually right in front of the text now. So now if we go back to my current view and actually go down to, actually there's an easier way. You can click on red option 2 there. Can you see I've moved this bulb really close to the artwork. So it's kind of like carrying a little lamp around. Okay, and it's going out all directions. It's pretty cool, kind of moody, spooky. Z moves it away and close. And you've got your X and Y to kind of move it up and down. I'll zoom in a little bit. So zoom out, go to your top view and see if you can make it happen. So that's a point light. A spotlight's kind of similar, except it's directional. Does the same sort of thing. It's like you physically carrying a spotlight around. I'm gonna hit escape. That's pretty cool. So I'm gonna turn that one off. We're gonna have no lights. And I'm gonna add the last one, which is a spotlight. This is even harder to use if you've never used 3D. I'm gonna zoom out. I'm gonna click on current view. I'm gonna click on this first option and I'm gonna see if I can find, there he is there. If I click on my spotlight, you can see it's casting this way. It's only just getting a bit of this and it can be fun to use. Let's again get it into a kind of a spot where we know what's happening with it. So we're gonna go to current view. Let's go to top to see where it is. Zoom out. There's my little light there. I'm gonna grab my move option. I'm gonna click on my spotlight. It's shining kind of through and past my object, which is cool. What I want to do is I want to try and move it. Move it this way. I need to rotate it around, so I'm going to use the rotation option. And I'm going to move it so it's facing there. Move it closer. Or further away. So that's looking at it from the top. We know it's kind of at least from the top down. We can see it pointing at my object. Go back to current view and let's look at it from the right hand side. Okay, so it's kind of coming down and towards it, and that's fine. Spotlight. I might bring it down this way. Closer in, and say I want to rotate it. Make sure you got the rotation and click and drag it. It's a little bit hard, left and right, not up and down. So I've got a spotlight pointing at my text and my background. Let's have a little look. Let's go back to my red option 2. Click on my spotlight. You can see mine here. It's actually pointing kind of just up and to the left. So I could play a fun game of trying to rotate it and clicking and dragging and rotating it around. I'm going to use the rotate 3D object and try and drag it around to point it at my graphic. And it's kind of working. So it's very directional. And we have to do a lot of switching between different views to try and work it out. All right, the other thing you can do is you've got the hotspot and the cone of light. So basically how focused this is. Okay, whoops, wrong option. Okay, it's these two little dots here. So I can expand this out. Okay, so what's happening is inside the circle is full brightness from this light. You can adjust the intensity of that center chunk. Then you've got the fall off. Okay, which is anywhere between this hotspot and the outside of the cone. So there's no light outside of this. Watch this. If I tuck you in very narrow and then this in very narrow, you can see the light is only affecting within that little range there. So I'm going to expand it out. And again, this will depend on what you want to do. Do you want a really narrow kind of searchlight? You can adjust the hotspot and cone over here. It's a little hard to work out on the graphic. Hit render. You can see there I had a kind of a weird square going on. That was just temporarily while it was just working. Okay, and in my case, I want the cone to be a lot bigger. I want the shadows to have a bit more softness. And I'm going to play around with the rotation of it. So spotlight selected, the orbit option, and I'm just going to kind of wiggle it around until I get it how I want. Render. All right, so that is a half render, but that is the difference between a spotlight. You point it around and it's super fun and not difficult. It's difficult. It's hard to get pointing in the right direction. Point light is quite easy. You just got to make sure you zoom out and actually find it on the map. Okay, you might have to play around with the different views just to figure out where it is in the world. And I can see mine there. There's my little point light. Move it to where I want it to be. Up, down, left, right. I can adjust how bright it is, how fluffy the shadows are, whether it has shadows at all. Or you can use the infinite light, okay, which is more like you just play around with the direction it's hitting things. It's all cast from the same angle. Go to my red option too. Zoom in. It's just a nice, simple light. Or you might turn that off and use just the environment light. Or it's just kind of a generic fill. Things refract and bounce around and fill things. There's a bit of contrast. Okay, and there's shadows cast. But it's a bit more like real life-ish. Or you can turn them all on. Have them all battling for supremacy. And all kind of oversaturating each other. To render that, wow, that's bright. All lights working together as one. All right, so that's going to be it for lights. Let's get into the last video where we look at rendering for our final production. Okay, so we've got everything we like. We've got the shadows, how we want, the materials, the angle, the depth of field. How do we like export this? We don't really export it. What you do is you render it and then don't change anything. I'll show you what I mean. First thing I want to do is I want to crank up my preferences. We turned them down in a previous video. So under Photoshop Preferences Performance, nope, 3D. It's under Edit, Preferences 3D on a PC. Now what you'll find is cranking this up to like maximum of everything is actually just going to take a zillion years to render. If you're okay with that, let's see how long this is going to take. Let's hit our render. Now rendering is all the buttons plus R. It's this shortcut here, or you can just click on this. Okay, or you can click on this option here. Zoom render. Yours will just say render, come halfway through mine. Under 3D though, there's an option that says render, lots and lots of rendering. Let's just see how long it's going to be at full noise of an image that's only 1500 pixels across. You can see down here, time remaining, it's going to be about 14 hours. 13 hours, it's a bit jumpy at the beginning here, but you are going to get the most perfect render that you're probably not going to need. Okay, so you've got to decide what the balance is. A really good balance is under preferences is probably something like 3D. So shadow quality is going to be high, and the quality threshold is going to be about, the 456 is fine, looks good. If you find there's some noise that you don't like, okay, you might come back in here and increase it up, but up around 10 is just way too hardcore. Even for like finished final work, 5 is going to look just good. Okay, so I'm going to render now, and you have the benefit of me speeding this up, so we'll just see how long this one's going to take, and I'll see you when it's done. I'm going to go get a coffee. All right, I'm back. Didn't make a coffee, I made pot noodles. It's grim, nothing here in the office. But we've done our render. Now, I want this to not look, like I want to get rid of this 3D stuff it's rendered. The trick is don't move anything. What you want to do is go back to your layers panel and just click off that layer. And that's it. You just got a file that's ready to be used. You can import this into InDesign or Illustrator, but it feels a bit weird because you've still got access to the 3D stuff. I know I do. So sometimes I just want a JPEG. So I'm going to go to File. I'm going to go to Save As. I'm going to save mine on my desktop. I'm going to call this one Rad even. And actually you're going to be a JPEG. Click Save. And click OK. And hopefully on my desktop, I've got Rad. There he is. And yep, that is a high quality version of Rad. Let's say you plan on going in and back and working with the 3D type. What you might do is click on this layer here, do a select all, copy, and just paste it. Then you've got a version of this that's, I moved over a little bit, okay, but then you've got a version of this that's actually just flat. There's no 3D about it. You can turn it off, so you can come back in here and go and mess with the 3D again. 3D panel, current view, mess about with it. And potentially now you can go and re-render it. If you weren't happy with the render you got before, you can go in back into here and just increase the quality threshold. I felt like mine was fine, but let's say you're having problems with maybe artifacts with, say you went with the glass option and you just weren't happy with the realism of the glass, you can crank up the quality threshold and hit render again. Maybe you do it before you go to bed or just before you go to lunch and you're happy with a 1 hour render. But because we did a copy and paste back in here in the layers, we can always go back to that one and maybe compare it against our new render, all in the one file. All right, so that's going to be the end of our 3D experience. Now there is a lot more to 3D than what I've shown you here. We just covered the basics. We covered making things 3D, either by converting it into a postcard or like here, where we extruded the text. We looked at changing the materials. Then we looked at using the cameras to our advantage. Okay, so setting and saving these different views and playing with the depth of field. We looked at lighting and the shadows, and we looked at exporting just now. All right, so that's going to be it for our introduction to 3D in Photoshop. I hope you found it useful. Let's get on to the next part of the tutorial series. It's class project time. We're going to make some 3D stuff. I'm happy for you to use your own images, or you can use the one I've supplied. So in your 15 3D folder, there's a class project folder. There's a background graphic you can use. That'll be the one you turn into a postcard and smush with this one here that you can extrude as 3D text. Okay, so this one here, just import, file import, like we did the Twitter logo in the set of videos before, and extrude it, or you can create your own graphic or use your own text. It's totally up to you. Then I want you to experiment with colors, materials, angles, the depth of field, the lighting, and when you're finished, render it all out and share it with me. Depending on your computer, I've given you a document size, okay? It's kind of standard video size, 1920 pixels across by 1080 pixels high, but you can make that smaller if you're finding it a little bit hard to render it. Just kind of work with it in any sort of sense. When you're finished, I'd love to see what you do. You might try a few different ones and send me all of them. Maybe make a little montage of 3 or 4 different angles, different colors, different materials. I'd love to see what you make. And it'd be really good practice. 3D is a tough one. Hope you enjoy the new experience. All right, on to the next video. Hi there, are you ready to fake 3D? The last video, we learned how to do it properly. In this video, we're gonna use a cheap trick. You don't need a 3D compatible version of Photoshop. You just need a paintbrush, a gradient, and a word to write. We'll even fake in some shadows. Can you see in the background there? Fake shadows. All right, let's learn how to do a fake version in Photoshop. All right, to get started, let's open up Fake 3D from our 15 3D folder. This background is just a pretty background. It's not going to have any influence on the 3D-ness of what we're doing. Next thing we need to do is down the bottom here, grab the rectangle tool, hold it down until we get the ellipse tool. This ellipse needs to have the gradient we want to use, so it's probably going to have a normal fill. So click on fill at the top here and click on gradient. We're not too worried about the colors at the moment. Click this first one, this black versus white. We're going to go and change it in a second. And draw out a circle. I'm holding down the shift key so that when I drag this out, it's a perfect circle. How big should it be? Basically, it's how big you want the largest part of your kind of 3D text. You saw mine didn't get too big, so that's fine. It can be smaller, it can be bigger. All right, let's change the gradient. With the ellipse selected, my properties panel here, I'm going to click on the color and I'm going to double click these bottom houses. You could pick one of the default ones, that would work. I'm going to jump out to gradient because I love stealing colors from these guys. I'm going to use the page 2 option. Where are you? Page 3 even, this one here. Okay, so I'm going to add 3 little points. Let's click on the little color, grab the hexadecimal number, click on this, double click this first icon, paste it in down the bottom here, jump back out. Thank you, gradient. I'm going to add this middle one by just clicking anywhere in this kind of bottom part. It just appears magically. Actually, I kind of like it with the orange. No, I'm going to stick to the original. I'm just going to leave the orange. Crazy Dan. Thinking for your gradient self. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this layer. I'm going to click it and hit Command J. And I'm going to turn this off. I want this kind of editable shape for later on because this tool's not going to work if this is a lovely live shape. So what we have to do is right click ellipse 1 and go to rasterize layer, destroying all the good updatableness to it, but it means this technique is actually going to work. Okay, so what we need to do is we need something called the mixer brush. So it's hiding underneath your brush tool. Hold it down, grab the mixer brush. All right, first thing you need to do is this little drop down here. You need to turn this off. It's going to be on by default. Let's turn off load solid colors only because we want to steal a gradient. And along here, we want to set the wetness down to 0, the load up to 100%. And let's get the hardness of this brush. Okay, so I'm just going to click on the general brushes and use this hard rounded one. The first thing we need to do is we need the brush size to be bigger than our lips here. So make your brush just bigger than what you need it to be. Because what we're going to do is we're going to hold down the Option key on a Mac or the Alt key on a PC to set this as a target. We're going to say U. Yours is probably not going to work because it's going to say sample all layers. So it's going to grab my background as well as this. Look up here. So with it on, it grabs too much. Background plus my ellipse. I want to say actually just sample the layer that I'm on. Okay, which is this. So this is where it's going to steal from. I'm going to lower my brush size to kind of what I want to use to draw with. We're going to create our own layer. This one's going to be my 3D type layer. Actually, you're not allowed to call it 3D. It's 2.5D. Fake 3D. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to draw. Terrible type with my mouse. So we're kind of there. It's doing kind of what we want. Let's undo that. I'll leave it there. We'll turn it off. Let's make another layer. What you can do to make it look a little nicer than... Actually, that came out all right. Gotta move fast. But let's say you want to smooth it out. You can go up to this cog icon. Actually, if you can't see this thing here, it's smoothing. You might have to turn it on in your brush settings. So go to Window and down to Brush Settings and just turn smoothing on if it's not already. Okay, and it just means that I get to say, it doesn't have to be 100%, but if I crank it up to about 70, when I draw that same word, it's a bit slower, but it's averaging out my movements and things are looking a whole lot nicer. 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 I'm going to draw it again. Spend my time. Why am I using the word queen? I like the word Q in 3D and I don't know. And that's definitely queen. That was meant to be an E. All right, I'm going to redo my E. E. Oh man. So bad. I'm going to get my Wacom tablet out in a second and I'm going to show you how awesome it is with the tablet. All right, that'll do. Okay, so smoothing helps, but really this effect works great with one of two things. We're going to use a Wacom tablet now. And in the next video, we will look at using paths. What is a Wacom tablet? It is that pen you draw with. Okay, it acts as a mouse, but you get to hold it like a pen. I've plugged mine in now. I guess I'm reluctant to do this whole course with a Wacom tablet, even though retouching is really handy with one of these. Not everyone has one. But let's look at the perk of using it with this particular tool. So I've created a new layer. This is going to be my Wacom version. I use the Wacom Intuos Pro, the medium size one. I like it. Good size, looks really well. So now I'm using the pen. I'm going to pick a brush size probably that is a chunk bigger. Yeah. Other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my smoothing down to 0, mainly because I'm reasonably good doing it with just the pen. You can see it's pretty smooth. You can turn on smoothing maybe just a little bit, but now I'm drawing with a pen. I'm going to try and do a nice one. Q, nope, Q. And you can see what's really nice about it is that the size of the brush changes depending on how hard you push. So now I'm probably going to do a zillion attempts at trying to make the word queen again. Oh, the N is the last one. I'm running out of room. I'm going to grab my layer and just kind of move it across. So close. Oh, I can't finish it. That'll do. Nope. All right. It's close enough. But you can see how nice it is when you are using just a tablet, just to do like little dots and little things and... Okay, ruining it. Cool. All right. What we will do to add a little bit more realism to this before we go, I'm going to switch back to my mouse. What I'm going to do is with this layer selected, I'm going to add a drop shadow. Yeah, that all looks good. And click OK. Remember, what I want to do is right click drop shadow and create layer. Thank you very much. And it just means this drop shadow is now on its own layer. What I'm going to do is maybe get it to, I'm not sure how much. I'm going to break it into half at least. I'm going to grab you, copy, actually cut it. So edit, cut it, edit, paste. So I've got kind of two halves. Why? Because I want to use this fold in the floor. So let's work on the top half first. I'll turn the bottom half off. And that's kind of what I want to do, right? I want it to look like the light's coming from up here and kind of sticking it against the back wall. Then with this layer, okay, the bottom chunk, I want it to line up. Using my arrow keys just to make sure it lines up. And then I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, and I'm going to use the Perspective option. I'm just going to kind of try and do something like that. So it looks like it's kind of going across the floor. Drag it out a little bit. Turn. Yeah, it's kind of working okay. All right, I might have to play with it a little bit more. I'm happy enough with it. And what we're going to do is play around the blending modes. Both of these, what I might do is find a blending mode that works for this one. So multiply. Let's look at something else a bit more believable. That's kind of nice, soft light. And maybe just lower the opacity of soft light as well. And I'll do the same for this one. You, my friend, are soft light, and I'm going to lower the opacity. Probably even a little bit lower. It's super subtle. It's helping a little bit. All right. So you make a circle, add a gradient, make sure it's rasterized, use the mixer brush, sample that ellipse, and then paint it on its own layer. If you tie it in with a tablet, like a Wacom tablet, you can do some nicer stuff where it's not just one kind of thickness. All right, let's get into the next video. We're going to do a very similar thing, but we're going to use paths instead. Things like the pen tool. All right, I'll see you in a sec. All right, in this video, we're going to do something similar to what we did in the last one, except we're going to use paths in this case. Gives us a bit more control, especially if you understand how the pen tool works. And plus, we'll work out how to interlock these things as well. Why 38? Because that's how many birthdays I've had. And they interlock really good. All right, let's get started. Okay, to get started, I'm just using that same background. I'm actually using the same file as before. I've just turned everything off. I'm going to make a new layer. This one's going to be my 3D using paths. 2.5D. So for this to work, we need a path. Paths are created using any of these tools. If you are a master of the pen tool, use the pen tool. If you have done my Illustrator course and you're loving the curvature tool, use that one. If you have no idea what any of these do, grab the freehand pen tool. And this is allowing us to draw paths or lines, but freehand. So undone, just make sure up the top here it's set to path and not shape. And if you want it, you can see it says curve fit. I think by default it's at 4. I can't even remember what the default is. But it goes up to a maximum of 10. It's just gonna like smooth out your drawing. If it's at 0 or 1, it's not gonna be very smooth. And I'm drawing, you saw at the beginning there, 38. It's my age. And it just so happens that they kind of interlock nicely. Ooh, I really want to grab the pen tool. All right, I can't do it. You can use the freehand pen tool. I'm using the curvature tool because it draws sweet curves. This is the super quick introduction. Click once again. It just gives you a line, but you click a third time and it's a curve. Click out here again, it's a wiggle, maybe one more time, a couple more times. And if I want to turn that into a corner, I hold down the Option key and give it a click, and it goes from a curve to a corner. Sweet curve, huh? So I've got my path, freehand tool or the pen tool or the curvature tool. And I'm going to go to paths, and that's what I need. Now, by default, a path kind of disappears when you stop working with it, unless you give it a name. So double click the word work path, and this is my 3, just so I can come back to them later on. Now in the path panel, if you can't see paths, it's under window, and there it is there. Okay, what you can do is right click any of this gray area and say, I'd like you to make a stroke on this path, please. From the options, I want to use the mixer brush tool. And if you haven't already, you need to go back to the previous tutorial to create the ellipse, set the target, get that mixer brush tool all set up. We're not going to cover that again. And just turn on simulate pressure. Now what it's going to do is, cool, huh? This is a way of getting around if you don't have a Wacom tablet and you want it to be nice and smooth. If yours doesn't look anything like this, there are a couple of things that might be wrong. I'm going to undo. The easiest thing to check is copy my mixer brush. So I'm going to go to my mixer brush there. I'm going to open up my mixer brush settings. Under shape dynamics, just make sure pen pressure is used. Smoothing doesn't have to be on, but definitely pen pressure. And along the top here, you can copy the settings that I've got. If you're finding where it gets kind of around the bend, it gets all kind of jagged, a couple of things you might do to fix that is go to brush tip shape and change the spacing down to like 1 or 2%. The higher it is, the more kind of jagged they are. That might fix it. If it doesn't, it probably means your original source, the thing we made in the last video, this guy here, isn't big enough. You've made a really small ellipse and you're trying to stretch it really big. And Photoshop is just kind of smushing it around the place. The other thing we're going to do, just because it's kind of cool, under the shape dynamics, we're going to say there is a minimum diameter. Can you see the edges here? Because that one that I did had really pointy ends of the 3. Let's have a little look and compare them. So I've got one layer, go to my paths, right click, stroke path, mixer brush, all good. Simulate pressure is going to put pointy ends. But what I want to do is make another layer. I'll turn that one off, go back to my paths. But before I go and add the stroke, I'm going to say it's got a minimum diameter. Can you see there? It's going to have that's as small as the line's going to get. It's not going to be pointy anymore. Stroke path. Depends on what you're looking for. All right, let's go through it one more time from the top. I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to grab my curvature tool and I'm going to draw my 8. Make sure it's on path, and I'm going to say I want you to start kind of there. Move down here. Have a curvature tool, just clicking, nothing held down, no dragging. There, and there. Great for doing figure eights from Infinity Designs. If you're not happy with the final result, you can jump into this white arrow here, the direct selection tool. Hold down the path selection, grab this, click any of the anchor points, and you can make adjustments to kind of get it more how you want. I'm happy enough with it. I lie. It's been ages fiddling around with that. That'll do. That's enough. Okay, one more. Nope. Oh. I think it was better before I started touching it. Anyway, I want to move the whole thing. So we're going to grab the path selection tool, grab any of the edges and just move it up. I've got my own layer. I'm going to go to paths, and I've done it totally wrong. All of this has been smushed onto one layer. So what I'm going to do is select it, cut it, new path, paste it, so it's on its own path layer. This one's going to be the 8. So you should do that first. Make a new layer, come into paths, make a new path, then start drawing the 8. Do as I say, not as I do. So with 8 selected, I'm going to stroke the path, mixer brush. You can see it's starting wherever I started. So if I was going to do it again, I'd probably start doing my path at the top here, because it looks kind of weird this way, but it will do. So to get rid of this line in the center here, just click anywhere out of the path, go back to layers, and what I want to do is get them to interlock. One goes over the top, one goes underneath. Actually, I'm going to grab my move tool and maybe rotate it around a bit. Look at this. Ah, so bad. I'm rotating it around so I can hide this little join here. And I want to do two things. I want that to go underneath and this to go above. So I need a version of this, the 8. So I'm going to duplicate it, and I need one above and one below the 3. There we go. 3 sandwich. The top one, I want to add a layer mask. I'm going to grab my brush tool, make sure the foreground color is set to black, painting on the mask, and I'm just going to paint this bit out. Makes it really easy to do this kind of interlocking thing. As long as there's one at the top, one at the bottom, and you just mask the one at the top. All right, so this is how to do our fake 3D interlocking path 38. I will see you in the next tutorial. Hello, it is time for your project. Using the techniques we learned in the previous 2 videos, you can either hand draw it or you can use the path option. I'd like you to create your own text. It can be your name, could be your age like me, favorite food, random word like queen because you like the shape of it. Now in your 15 3D folder, there's a class project folder, and I've given you 2 backgrounds that you can use, up to you. You can find other ones on Unsplash or Pixel, or it can just be a plain background, maybe a gradient. But use the techniques you've learned, create something and send it to me. Share it with everybody, either the assignments on this page, the comments, or share it with me on social media. Remember, on Instagram, I am Bring Your Own Laptop, and on Twitter, I am Dan Loves Adobe. Show me what you've made, and let's get on to the next video. Hi there, me again. If you enjoyed the video, could you give it a thumbs up? Consider subscribing to my channel as well. I give away lots of this free stuff. This particular video is just one video of over 100 videos that's in my full Photoshop Advanced course. So there'll be a link in the description for that if you want to go check that out. All right, happy YouTubing.